Friday, March 8th, 2013. Free original content from WMAL.com. This is the Chris Plante Show podcast.
Early this morning on WMAL, right here on WMAL, your go-to radio station in your nation's capital. On the morning show with Brian Wilson and Larry O'Connor, which we like to call Mornings on the Mall. They had a guest, Maryland State Senator Brian Frosh. Maryland State Senator Brian Frosh represents Montgomery County and presumably not just Montgomery County, but some surrounding environs. I don't have the chart in front of me. But he was on this morning to talk about the new Maryland gun legislation. You know, in the aftermath of Sandy Hook, they're going to stop Sandy Hook. They're going to stop Sandy Hook from taking place, and they're going to pass some laws in Maryland that will prevent Sandy Hook from taking place. I wonder if Connie Milstein picked up the tab for the dinner. That's what I wonder. I want to know what Connie Milstein had to do with the dinner at the Jefferson Hotel. So I want to play some audio from the Brian Frosh interview. Again, speaking to Brian Wilson and to Larry O'Connor this morning, Mornings on the Mall on WMAL. State Senator, Maryland, Brian Frosh, talking about the new gun legislation that's going to stop bad things from happening. And I would like to offer you the opportunity to respond to what State Senator Brian Frosh is saying about the new gun legislation in Maryland. State Senator Brian Frosh.
This is a common sense bill that'll save lives. We're talking about restricting the possession of the kind of assault weapons that resulted in mass killings in Newtown, Connecticut, Aurora, Colorado, Tucson, Arizona. You've seen it play out all over the country.
You've seen it played out all over the country. It's common sense. It will save lives. Restrict assault weapons that resulted in, you see, deaths. The assault weapons resulted in large numbers of deaths. State Senator Brian Frosh.
We can save lives through two different directions. You restrict the number of rounds in a magazine,
right,
to 10. You reduce the amount of assault weapons that are out there and unaccounted for. And 3, you prevent criminals from getting handguns.
And you prevent criminals from getting handguns. You see, you restrict the number of rounds to 10. That ought to reduce the number of killings. Reduce the number of assault weapons out there. It'll take about 100 years, but, you got to start somewhere. And what was the last part? The availability of handguns to criminals, you see. It's going to reduce the number of handguns that are available to criminals. And see, this legislation is going to make it real difficult, you see, for criminals to get guns. I mean, if you're a criminal, what to do, what a dilemma. Can't go to Maryland, can't get a gun there.
The question is, if you're a criminal, how are you going to get a gun? You got to find some intermediary to get it for you. And what this bill does is it stops that intermediary from doing it.
This bill stops the intermediary. See, if you're a criminal, you can't get a gun by going to a gun store because they have background checks, and you would fail the background check. So as a criminal, you find an intermediary to go to a gun store who doesn't have a criminal record, who will pass the background check, and that person then goes in and buys the gun for the criminal and gives them to the criminal. Of course, that makes you a criminal. Okay, so I mean, if I'm a criminal and I have a long criminal record and I can't pass a background check, then I ask Mike McKay, "Hey, Mike, I really need a gun because I'm a criminal, but I can't get one because I'm a criminal. So, Mike, would you be a good guy and go in and get me a gun and then give it to me? Because you're not a criminal and you have no criminal record. You can pass the background check. So, would you get it for me? I'd like a 1911, and I'll wait out here in my car. So go get it, and then I can get it for you." See, and this bill will stop Mike from doing that. Nothing else will stop Mike McKay from going out and buying that gun from me, a known criminal. But this law will. Senator Brian Frosh.
It doesn't put a big burden on gun owners. First of all, if you already got one and you possess it legally, you don't have to do anything. So it it puts no additional burden on you. What it does is it stops the girlfriend of the felon from going to a gun store and buying him one, bringing it home, and putting it on the nightstand.
It stops the girlfriend, you see. Mike's not my girlfriend, I'm happy to say. But if, but see, this stops the girlfriend of a criminal from going in and buying the gun. This law does that. This doesn't, I mean, how it does that? I don't know, because I assume that the girlfriend goes in buying the gun knowing that what she's doing is illegal because she's providing a gun to someone who's prohibited from buying a gun. Isn't that already illegal? Liberals, Democrats have, I don't know if this is the case here with Brian Frosh, who was nice enough to come on the morning show, but liberals love to make laws that make things illegal that are already illegal. But this time they really mean it. This time it's really illegal. Last time it wasn't so illegal. So there's no burden on gunners. If you already own one, including what he would term an assault rifle, but isn't an assault rifle, it doesn't affect you at all. But this is, remember, common sense, and it's going to save lives. Reduce the number of assault weapons, reduce the number of handguns in the hands of criminals, but only in the hands of criminals. Restrict magazines to 10 rounds, and this is it's common sense, and it's going to save lives. Larry O'Connor, co-host of Mornings on the Mall on WMAL, jumped in with a question.
Well, but it also prevents the girlfriend, the actual girlfriend, of going out and getting a gun and protecting herself with it.
No, it doesn't.
Well, sure. If you're saying that she can only have 10 rounds in the gun. What if she wants to protect herself with a multi-round magazine, which a lot of people do?
Beginning the scoff there. This is going back to the 10-round magazine question, and I've been asking this question forever because it's kind of like questions in philosophy class. Where is the end of the universe? What is the sound of one hand spanking? Well, actually, we know that sound, don't we? What is the sound of one hand clapping? And how many rounds do you need to defend yourself? It's an open-ended question. There is no answer. But some elected officials have answers.
The odds of her hurting somebody in the household other than an invader are much higher if she has a magazine clip of 30.
I like that one. That's one of my favorite ones. Larry O'Connor.
Hopefully the home invader will not be able to count to 10 and then know when she is unarmed, I guess.
Well, hopefully, she's well enough trained so that 10 rounds is enough. I mean, how many times do you know of a home invasion where it took 30 rounds to stop an intruder? I
don't know. How many do you know of where it took 10? What might be a rational response to that. Because it's an unanswerable question. Here's the question. How many rounds does it take to defend yourself? I'd like to ask Eric Holder that question. It'd be funny just to watch him run around the room trying not to answer. Senator Brian Frosh.
If you don't feel comfortable with 10 rounds in your magazine, you're probably not good enough with it to use 30 rounds.
No, that was an attention-getting exchange. And so I wanted to bring it to your attention as well. And here's the deal. Look, Joe Biden tells his wife, Jill, to get a shotgun. She's a doctor, a Ph.D. in education from the University of Delaware. Call her doctor. And he told her, take a double-barrel shotgun. That means it would have 2 rounds. Go out on the balcony, when the Hells Angels are invading your home. Fire both rounds and then stand there with an empty weapon. All right? So that, obviously, is the advice of a moron. And, here's the... this would be the follow-on advice. If you have an AR-15, Jill, with Dr. Biden, with 30 rounds in it, and the home invasion occurs, go out on the balcony, fire all 30 rounds, and then stand there with an empty weapon. If you have a Glock with 17 rounds, walk out, fire 17 rounds, and then stand there with an empty weapon. It doesn't make any sense. Joe Biden later updated his recommendation to his wife and to the rest of America. If there's somebody in your house, just shoot through the door. And then, of course, ask the customary question, honey, is that you? All right, let's go to the phones. Senator Brian Frosh. He's got his finger on the pulse. He's got the power to pass legislation, and it is underway in Maryland. We're at 888-630-9625. Let's go to Tim in Northern Virginia. Tim, you're on the Chris Plante Show.
Hey, good morning, Chris.
Morning.
I'd just like to say that, first of all, I'm a police officer in Northern Virginia, and even trained law enforcement officers in a heated battle probably only hit their target about maybe 20, 30, 40% of the time. And these people that come into houses like that, they travel in packs. It's not one person coming in. So now you got to try to divide your ammo between 2 or 3 moving targets. It's just ridiculous.
Well, and in Virginia, there's no such prohibition, correct?
No.
We're
reasonable in Virginia.
So if I'm a bad guy and I've got, I'm just out of prison and I meet up with my old pals and there are 4 of us driving around, in our 1973 Electra 225 and we're looking for a home to invade, I'm going to say, well, you're in D.C. Where do you want to go? Do you want to go to Maryland or do you want to go to Virginia to invade the home? They're doing away with the death penalty. They're trying their best to disarm the citizenry. They're limiting people to 10 rounds capacity in magazines. And, there are 4 of us, middle of the day, the man's probably not home. I think I'm going to choose Maryland.
Yeah, definitely. And this whole concept that assault rifles were involved in so many of these mass shootings, it took them 7 weeks before they even came out and mentioned that the guy up in Newtown never took his rifle out of the trunk of his car.
Well, there are mixed reports about that. I think the police. Correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe maybe you've got perfect clarity on this, but if you do, I don't. I think there was an additional rifle or maybe other rifles in the trunk of his car that we saw being removed from the trunk of his car. But I'm still under the impression, at least, that he went in with 1 rifle.
My understanding, and I don't have anything official from up there, but my understanding is this was all handguns up there.
Well, if that's the case, then there's a massive cover-up underway, isn't there?
Well, it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, obviously the media has their agenda, and it's not the truth.
Yeah, that's for sure. But, look, the Gabrielle Giffords shooting was a Glock pistol. Gabrielle Giffords owns a Glock pistol. At Virginia Tech, pistols, no long guns at all, much less what Democrats like to call assault rifles. So here's what they're asking. They're asking that mass murderers use different weapons.
Right, unless this is a pretense for them to first get the what they call assault rifles, which are nothing more than rifles off the street, and then they can go back and start citing, well, all these killings happen with handguns, and then we need to start doing something about that.
Well, look, Tim, they started when I was a kid by calling for bans on what they called Saturday night specials. You remember this? Because all the street criminals were using Saturday night specials. A Saturday night special was nothing more than a revolver. Any revolver fit the definition of Saturday night special. It kind of depended on how much it cost, maybe. An expensive gun didn't fall into that category, perhaps, but really it did, wink, wink. And what they were trying to do was ban revolvers. Then the Glock came along, and they said they wanted to ban plastic guns. You remember this?
Mm-hmm.
Because they said plastic guns couldn't be picked up by metal detectors. It wasn't true at the time, and they knew it, but they made the argument that they wanted to ban what they called plastic guns, Glocks and other guns that have, some parts of the frame are not metal, and or of the grip at least. And so they tried to ban that. And now they've got situations where is it in Colorado, the ban? It calls for banning shotguns, whole families. I think it's Colorado. I need to check that. But where shotguns with, 6-round capacity would be banned under one of their new laws. And it's just, we're being led by people that don't have the first clue what they're talking about and are dishonest and have an agenda. And they are looking to pass laws that simply won't solve the problem that they're pretending they're solving.
No, I agree. It's they're all agenda-based. You can tell by the way they report it. And I'd tell you, it gets pretty infuriating when you're a weapons guy and you listen to these people talk, and they don't have a clue what they're saying. So
Yeah, and I mean, you just said you're a police officer, so you train on ranges. You have to qualify. You work with people who shoot better than you and don't shoot as well as you, I'm assuming, unless you're the champion. And you say that you, in a heated situation, which is, a home invasion, something like that, generally people who are trained police officers hit the target 20% of the time, 30% of the time. 40% of the time is probably a pretty good average.
Yeah.
Because you're moving, the bad guy is moving. It's a disorienting situation. The adrenaline is flowing. The bad guys are crazy people, or they wouldn't be doing it in the first place. They're moving fast. It's a very difficult and traumatic situation. So, 10 rounds can go in, how fast, how quickly can you fire off 10 rounds from like a Glock semi-automatic pistol?
Seconds, probably 3 seconds, 4 seconds.
Right.
And fire them all off.
That's right. Probably 3 or 4 seconds you can get rid of 10 rounds. Boom, 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 and then you're standing there, right?
Yep. That's it.
So Senator Frosh is correct in everything he says. This will save lives, or it won't save lives.
Well, it'll save the lives of the home invaders, I'm sure.
Well, maybe that's just it. We weren't specific enough. See, it's like, in conversations, like conversations with Eric Holder, you have to make the question very, very, very specific so that there's no escape from an honest and truthful answer. Maybe we're just not aware of the fact that the lives they're looking to save are the lives of the home invaders.
Yeah, it sure sounds that way.
That could be it. Maybe I just hadn't thought it through.
Yeah.
Tim, thank you very much, my friend. You stay safe out there, as they used to say.
Thank you very much.
All right, buddy.
Yeah.
Brian Frosh, he's got it. 10-round magazine capacity because, and this is one of the best parts, well, little lady, if you can't get a home invader with 10 shots, maybe you don't deserve to have a gun. Maybe you should just stick to kitchen utensils and try to strangle them with an apron. Maybe you should feed them some of that food you're cooking. That ought to take care of them. Ho, ho, ho. If this guy was a Republican, every Republican in the country would be a misogynist.
If you don't feel comfortable with 10 rounds in your magazine, you're probably not good enough with it to use 30 rounds.
Let's face it, you're just not good enough. That would include police agencies all over America. Hey, come on, let's make it a fair fight for the bad guy. Now, I don't think you can find a police department, maybe you can, that goes with 10-round magazines. But I don't think so. I don't think you can find police agencies, local, state, federal, county, that goes with 10-round magazine. Used to go with the 6-shooter long ago, back, when Andy Griffith, I think Barney Fife carried a 6-shooter, but he was only allowed to carry 1 bullet, and it was in his shirt pocket. That was for safety, though. It was Mayberry. It was 1960, and it was Barney, so keep that in mind. Maryland State Senator Brian Frosh this morning on WMAL. Let's go to telephones. Let's go to Mike in Chantilly. Mike, you're on the Chris Plante Show.
Hi, Chris.
Hey.
This idiot, whatever his name is, state senator in Maryland, he's a perfect example of why I moved out of Maryland 20 years ago.
Really? You moved out of Maryland because it was getting wacky?
Yeah, I moved mainly because of taxes. I got tired of getting racked, and I moved to Northern Virginia 20 years ago. And, the people who still, vote Democrat in the People's Republic of Maryland, they deserve their fate. I'm sorry, it's cynical, I know, but, and also I think and this is really cynical, but, I think the Dems, they need to have the people who typically own guns, law-abiding citizens, don't vote Democrat for the most part. So if you eliminate them, the criminals typically do vote Democrat. So we want to make sure we keep our constituency alive, literally. And, I mean, that's really cynical, I know.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. I don't know Senator Brian Frosh. He may be a perfectly nice guy. I bet his, dog likes him, and his family probably is very fond of him, and all that stuff. And but I marvel at political discourse in America. So you raise the question, well, how do you know that 10 rounds of ammunition is enough to defend yourself in all situations, as the state of Maryland is now looking to mandate? And the answer comes back as an insult. Right? And which is perfectly typical, I'm sad to say, these days of political discourse in America, particularly of the Democrat Party, although John McCain and Lindsey Graham were engaging in this kind of response with
who are we kidding? They're Democrats.
Their fellow Republicans. But I look at the way that we have discussions, and what appear to be reasonable adults, when you are challenged on the veracity of your position, resort to insulting entire populations of people,
right.
because it's been discovered that you're just kind of not maybe as well informed on the issue as you should be. And it's all too common for that to be the standard response. I see this all the time with liberals who are not state senators on my show who call in, and it's, I describe it as the squirrel in the backyard chasing a squirrel around the backyard with a tennis racket, and they just sprint in one direction after another, and you say, well, that doesn't make sense. And they say, oh, yeah, you're an idiot. Well,
yeah.
No, actually, I'm not an idiot. I'm asking a follow-up question. That's a perfectly rational and reasonable follow-up question, like, since you've taken it upon yourself to target and assassinate American citizens overseas, do you also give yourself the authority to do that at home? That's a perfectly reasonable follow-up question to the situation that we're talking about. And any reasonable adult would respond in a reasonable and adult fashion. But you often don't get a reasonable adult response in situations like that. And what I heard this morning in this situation is, just such a situation. And well, how do you know? I mean, it really is. Where's the end of the universe? What is the sound of one hand clapping? And how many rounds do you need to defend yourself? If you only need 10 rounds, then why do police officers need more than 10 rounds?
Right. Well, to show his ignorance is the fact that he used the phrase clip magazine.
Yeah.
Those are completely different things.
Yeah.
He has no concept of he probably has never even seen a gun in his life, let alone have any idea what the parts of a gun are called.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to have him on this show for an hour and ask him a series of questions and, see if he could enlighten me or if I could enlighten him. I don't think he'd take me up on that offer, but it's an open offer if he'd like to take me up on it. So it is just, and the amazing part to me, or one of the amazing parts, is the insult that is delivered, and it's kind of directed at women,
Yeah. You can't defend yourself, I'm sorry,
And in fact, it's not kind of directed at women, it is directed at women.
Yes, it is.
All right, and it is, well, little lady, if you can't defend yourself with 10 rounds, then maybe you're just too stupid to own a gun.
Yeah,
and that, and again, I'm rephrasing what he said, but that's the essence of what he said. And again, if a Republican said something like this, he would become the subject of 48 hours of mockery and derision on MSNBC, and he would come to symbolize all Republicans everywhere. But the party of Ted Kennedy and Bill Clinton and on and on it goes, John Edwards and Elliot Spitzer, they are insulated from this sort of criticism for some inexplicable reason.
Mm-hmm.
And I listen to this and I just marvel. So there it is.
Yeah, Gabby Giffords, he mentioned her. He said, well, the guy that shot Gabby Giffords with that Glock 33, or I forgot what the model number he gave, he said he hit her in the head with the first shot. And yet he's talking about limiting people to 10-round magazines. Well, then you can extrapolate, well, if you're advocating 10-round magazine limits, then why don't you advocate no ammunition? Because if he never would have had ammo, he couldn't have shot Gabby Giffords in the head.
Well, a lot of Democrats would, in fact. And, there's a city council member in Washington, D.C., Mary Che, who has now introduced legislation that would require the owners of firearms to buy liability insurance. Mm-hmm. So that, and I was reading it in the Washington Post, marveling at what I was reading. I think it was yesterday morning in the Metro section, and marveling at what I was reading. She said that this money would be used, and apparently, I don't know who we pay this money to, but she said it would be used to fund the damage caused by shootings in Washington, D.C. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm paying into a fund, so if some jamoke in Georgetown shoots some other jamoke in Georgetown, I'm paying for the medical costs or something like that? How does that make sense? And, of course, it doesn't. What it is a way to burden, to punish, to harass gun owners, those who exercise their Second Amendment rights, because the liberal left doesn't believe in Second Amendment rights. They don't believe in First Amendment rights. They don't believe in the Bill of Rights. They believe that the state should be able to assassinate Americans wherever they are without due process. And more, but you shouldn't be able to buy a Coke over 16 ounces, and you should be able to buy votes of homeless people in Milwaukee with packs of cigarettes, and then, have the president over to your place for dinner, and that's no problem. So the incoherent Democrat Party is becoming a little bit too much for me to bear.
Well, there's a states. I think she's a state congresswoman in Florida. She introduced a bill in the Florida House there. I think it was a few days ago. That she wants to get a law passed that says anybody who buys ammunition in the state of Florida must attend a mandatory anger management training.
A state representative in Florida, a Democrat, of course, and anger management training, and you'd have to repeat the course from time to time. Anger management. What about people that are buying a bottle of whiskey? Or buying a car, or getting married, or having children, or going to work in a new workplace, or working in a school, or anger management. How about for state legislators who come up with these insane ideas that are designed to harass people? And there was this dimwit Republican state representative in the state of Washington who was advocating a bill that would put a $25 tax on the purchase of bicycles over $500, that would, and it's a bicycle tax, right, of $25, and it was introduced by Democrats, but this nitwitted Republican was arguing that it's a good idea, the tax was a good idea, because people that ride expensive bicycles are huffing and puffing, and when they exhale CO2, which is a greenhouse gas, which is damaging to the environment, and he actually said in response to one person's questioning that bicyclists actually emit more CO2 than people that drive certain cars, so there should be a tax on them because we know that greenhouse gases, 90-something% of which are water vapor, are killing the planet. So we need a new tax, and how that's going to save the planet, I don't know, but it'll take more money out of people's pockets. This guy calls himself a Republican. He was defending legislation introduced by Democrats. He's obviously an idiot, regardless of his party identification, and this is the world these people must be stopped, regardless of their party. These people must be stopped. These people are nuts. And whoever voted for them needs to take a long, hard look at themselves in the mirror. But liberals love this stuff. They love it. Oh, tax on bicycles. Well, yes. They breathe. They finally got to the breathing tax. I think the flattest tax is next.
The odds of her hurting somebody in the household other than Vader are much higher if she has a magazine clip of 30.
Silly little woman. Why do Democrats hate women? This is like the war on women. It's the Democrat war on women, started by Ted Kennedy back there at Chappaquiddick, and it continues today. This is an outrage. What was the name of Ted Kennedy's nephew who beat the girl to death with a golf club? Her name was Martha Moxley. He was, one of those Kennedy guys. They just hate women. They leave them dead in cars. They beat them to death with golf clubs. Maybe you should strangle them with your apron, honey bunny. It's like, pull out your apron that says, "Who invited all these tacky people?" and strangle the home invader to death. Why don't you do that? And the Democrats hate women, and that would be the narrative, of course.